Welcome to the Be Ruthless show, where we have the conversations that other people don't. The conversations that other people won't. I'm your host, Sam Ruth, and I'm ready to make a lot of noise and disrupt things, ruthlessly. Thanks for being here today. Now let's get to it. Welcome back to the Be Ruthless show. I'm your host, Sam Ruth. And joining me today is Bill Correll. We're going to try this again. Bill is a certified life and business coach and has consulted with a host of professionals and organizations on demanding project and development goals. Bill's core talent is to accentuate the PowerPoint of his clients to increase performance and results, making mostly minor additions and enhancements. Bill calls this the 5% effect. It is easier to focus on course correction than an entirely new direction. Bill continues to seek and add leading technology products and services to his company's offerings. In the recent times, Bill has helped not-for-profit organizations streamline operations, public image, and securing stable and sustainable future funding sources. In addition, Bill has launched a successful podcast called Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. Recently, Bill and his team recorded the 100th episode. Suffice it to say that Bill is for people living their best lives, especially kids. He works at this labor of love every day. He currently enjoys spending time with his grandchildren, his wife Janet, his extended family, and all of his networking buddies. We didn't talk much last time about your love for kids, so let's talk a little about that.
I think I come by it honestly. I actually was the firstborn and had 5 siblings. And it went boy, 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 girl, girl, girl. And my name was supposed to be Linda. In those days, they really didn't have a good way to check. And they were hopeful for a girl until the 4th child, which turned out to be Diane. Linda got scrapped somewhere along the way. So we moved around a lot. My dad was, he worked for a government contractor since like 1958 or 59. And so I got to be really good friends in about 5 different schools by the time I was in 3rd grade with a whole bunch of people. And so because I'm from a large family, my mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother. So there's 8 of them altogether. A lot of cousins, grew up around a ton of people. I've got, some that are my age on both sides of the family. And as the kids grew up, my kids, our house tended to be the place where everybody hung out. Kind of similar when we were kids as well. We had a rope swing in our backyard. Everybody loved it. The whole neighborhood was there. They came and went as if they lived there as well. And as it stands right now with my two daughters and all of their friends, I have a lot of daughter number 3 for some reason. And they are from all walks of life. It's a very diverse population here in Willimantic, and I love them all dearly. But the thing of it is that I've always thought that children deserve to have an opportunity to make as many mistakes as it takes to learn. And I've also believed that if we behave the same way that we did with kids, remember, when you first learned how to walk and you'd fall down, there was nobody standing around going, "Don't get up, man. Whatever you do, do not get up. You're going to fall again." Well, you get out of high school and college, what do? You're going to try something new. Immediately, they're very concerned about your well-being all of a sudden, even people that don't know you all that well. I've heard about people that have tried what you're going to try, and it hasn't worked out real well for them. Are you sure you want to do that? Well, okay, unless you can tell me what the pitfalls are, I'm not real interested in that conversation. But what I've done my whole life, and I'm doing it now with what I'm going to be doing in the outreach for children, is to take somebody to lunch who's sure I can't do it. They'll give me the blueprint of what I have to accomplish in order to be successful at where I want to go. So, kids, nuclear family, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important thing on the family. On the planet. If you're raised with a mother and a father figure, or two parents, let's just say, uh, versus a single parent that has to work, you've got a 90% greater chance of being successful at doing the following: graduating from high school, not having a baby until you've got a significant other, just to help carry the load, and get a job. And when you can do those three things, you're on the escalator towards success, and you're going to be someplace where you can actually do something with your life and learn. I think that a lot of kids early on in their teen years, and it's like I listened to Denzel Washington and him talking about, all of his friends did one of two things. They either were raised by their mom and dad and they got out of the neighborhood and made something of themselves, or they got raised by the neighborhood, which meant that they ended up with a life of, and he said a lot of them had a judge for a mother. And I can't even picture what that would be like for these kids, but I see some in YouTube videos and that sort of thing. And I think I just want to grab that guy and I want to hug him until he begs me to stop. And then I'm going to say to him, "You never had this before, did you?" So there's something missing, out there. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I have a lot of smart friends that are caregivers and social workers and that sort of thing, parish ministers, you name it, and they're all telling me the same thing. This generation of kids is different. They don't respond to the same kinds of things that even the last generation, the ones, who 10 years ago, who wanted to do something other than keep the same job all the time. You've got a lot of 40-year-olds that have changed jobs 5 times already. The new generation doesn't even want to get out of the house. And I don't have anybody from that generation that I live with or that I know. And my family, again, because we were a big family, each one of us, my siblings and I, had two kids or 3 kids. So I got a ton of nephews and nieces, and they've all had somewhere between 2 and 5 kids. So when we get together, it's a huge gathering, and there's not more fun than happy sounds of children. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, I know they've got other parts of their lives that are not going so well for them from time to time. I really would like to know more about that. So I could expound on what I want to do with children, the programs that I want to bring to them. I want to bring literacy. I want to bring good habits. I want them to be steeled against the all your friends are doing it mentality for good things and bad, and have them make a choice in decisions about big things. Be able to stop, look, listen, choose, then act.
My nieces are huge in my life. Moving to Colorado was an easy and difficult decision. Marrying Jim, the love of my life, the one who got away, was the fairy tale happy ending before I knew I would lose him. Believing them, I created my schedule around being able to be with Hannah, who's the oldest, spending the mornings with her and then going to see my clients. And Lila's younger. So I moved, she was barely 1. So I had this fear that I wouldn't be close with her moving at that age. And thank you to my brother for being the dad that he is, and keeping me in their life the way I'm as close or closer with Lila. But they have therapy dogs at her school, which is so neat to me. And I love when she tells me the stories, because there are kids that are scheduled to have their time with it's in the schedule, but then you are allowed to say, "Can I have time with the dog?" And you don't have to say why. And I'm going to go right into that is not even that's nowhere near happening in Colorado. And I wish it would. Imagine growing up, because I just like to say the emotional tummy aches, right? We're allowed to raise our hand and say, "I don't feel well," when it's physical. They're learning, and her she is learning to be able to do that at home and at school.
Yeah.
And I love that for her because we didn't have that with sports, shake it off, boys don't cry. There's so much that am so passionate about changing the conversation in school where kids spend so much time.
Right.
And she has that. I don't know if that's something you see, but just being able to have these conversations. Of course, home is where it needs to happen, but kids spend a lot of time in other places.
Yeah. The stats are really against this generation. I mean, if you stop and you think about it, when I was a kid, 1 in 4 marriages ended up in divorce. It's the opposite now.
Right.
3 out of 4 end up in divorce, and the ones who divorce, more than not, wind up having 3 or more spouses or mates for the rest of their life. So that tells me in my heart of hearts that there's something that's missing in terms of the relationship component of being a partner. There's something there that the kids are just not getting as they're growing up. And it's unstable. I mean, I lived in an unstable geographic home because we moved so many times. Lived in 13 homes and went to 5 schools by the time I was in 3rd grade, 2 of which were Catholic. The rest of them were not. However, I think it helped me adjust more because I really thought a lot about making friends quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, when I was in 1st grade, I figured out this whole Something to Remember Me by gig. I always ended up with a whole bunch of trinkets and trash moving on to the next place. People just loved to give me something to remember them by. I'm sure I'll take that. That's not bad. So I don't know. I want to know more about that. It's not something that I have expertise in. I'm pretty good with people in general. I'm really good with kids in a social circumstance. They take to me very quickly. Dogs do too, for some reason. And I kind of behave with them the same way that I do with adults. What you see is what you get. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, well, it doesn't mean that much to me to mean that much to you, as Neil Young would say. So all that said, I'll go out of my way, to be at the same level and interact with kids the way that they're interacting. And if they're down on their hands and knees doing something, I'll get down on my hands and knees too. The best thing in the world is to have a nonverbal exchange with a 2 or 3-year-old that ends up with both of us just laughing. So that's the game I play. Now I wonder, where is that needed most? And I remember grieving about all the kids I left behind. I just get to the point of having a really great relationship with, Donald down the street or Becky across the road or, and then we'd move on. And so I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what to do with it. And that kind of remained the same as we moved on. And finally, we settled in a home. And now my mom didn't move 3 times in a year as she did before. We moved 3 times in 6 years, okay? Bought home each time and finally built a home in 1968, and we lived there until I moved out in 74. However, where I'm sitting right now was the first home that we ever bought. It belonged in my wife's family, and it was there this home was in her family since 1890. It was built in 1878, and her grandfather and her father and 2 siblings were raised here, and then it was rented out for about 15 years, and then we decided we were going to go buy a house and maybe have a family and get some kids. This is after we were together for 5 years, no kids. Well, we moved into this place, 1978. 2 months later, My sister was here with her dog, and Janet came home from OBGYN appointment, and the dog jumped up on her and she said, "Whiskey, it's not good to jump up on a pregnant lady." And we all just screamed. We just, and started crying and everything. We were pretty sure at that point we couldn't have kids, and we've been blessed. So that's a long answer to a pretty simple question, but I actually emotionally tear up thinking about all the great family I have and how much I miss the ones that I'm not in contact with anymore. But yes, I love children. Can you tell?
I was at a board meeting talking about why I'm so passionate about changing the way the world views. I've added grief and mental illness, but I
Yes.
truly believe you just said it, leaving friendships behind.
Yeah.
Like, I believe grief is at the root of fill in the blank, homelessness, addiction. Like, I believe that if we addressed it, if we learn to have the conversations that were just, it's hard saying goodbye. It's hard losing someone. It's hard, whatever, fill in the
Yeah.
blank. We don't address, we didn't do it during COVID. I was having a field day with the fact that millions of people weren't having graduation, and that mattered. And people were acting like I was weird. And I was like, no, that's a loss. And that's a loss we need to address. Because if we don't address it, it will stew and be a problem later on. Like, these are things that end up becoming problems later
Yes.
somewhere.
Yeah. So it's kind of brilliant what you're saying, and I don't have the training in distinctions that you do regarding grief per se, and I do think that it's like a ball of different emotional things that kind of show up as different stuff as time goes on. But what it is for me is just a total abject loss of confidence. That what goes away is even the confidence that tomorrow's going to be okay. Like every day when you wake up in Colorado, you look west and you see the Rocky Mountains and you go, still there. I don't know if you do that or not, Sam, but I highly recommend it. It's really comforting, and that's the one thing that's going to continue on through time when everything else changes. But between the agony of loss and not being able to name it, the emptiness that it creates, it's almost like somebody has taken a piece of you and removed it and hid it somewhere. And it's really noticeable to you, and you think it's noticeable to everybody else. And whether it is or it isn't the point. You just don't have the confidence that you used to have with your kids, with your family, with your work environment. And that's stuff you have to like learn how to do all over again. And I call that mastering the mundane, when you have the intestinal fortitude to do the dirty work, the hard stuff, roll your sleeves up. I have some guttural language that I use, but the day-to-day dog doo-doo, blood and guts physical world, you have to get back on top of it again, or the rest of your life you're going to be living as kind of like a butterfly that never got its wings filled with fluid.
And we know that because we've lived it.
Yes.
But we help other people.
Yep.
Because we've lived it. We don't talk. The world could talk about it more and prevent the suffering. They just avoid it because it's uncomfortable. As a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, I knew this. At funerals, I would be bothered, and I would tell my dad, like, how can people stand up from this very, very sad situation and start saying, what's for lunch? Where are we go? Like, how do you go instantly from this event back to normal. I didn't understand it at that age. It bothered me. And I wanted there to be more. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted, even then, and there are more people who feel that. And we just sweep it under the rug because it bothers people. And we don't have to do that. We can address it.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. I have three major objectives to be a coach. And the first one is to get somebody completely in touch with what they genuinely are interested in accomplishing with their life. Beyond that, I don't care. Okay. Somebody wants to make a little bit more money. You're going to do that anyway. Okay. Be willing to change jobs 3 times in the next 2 to 3 years, and you can double your salary. All you have to do is keep looking for a place that will hire a worker and reward you for showing up every single day. That's not a hard one to do in this environment. So the first thing is have a good solid idea, no matter how old you are, what you want to be when you grow up. And I do that with people that are 50, 60, and 70 years old. Because you get people that retire and they're sitting on a nest egg and they don't know what to do with it. So the second thing is healing trauma. And this shows up in a lot of different ways. And it shows up mostly, they say we have 80,000 thoughts a day. I've never counted them, so I'm going to take their word for it that it's a lot, okay? Most of which are not your most inspired thinking. And as a result of that, what you end up with is a lot of mixed messages in terms of how you are. And the third thing is to be able to sort through all of those, rogue, counterfeit thoughts that you have, thought distortions that don't mean anything. And as a really great man once said, it doesn't mean anything that they don't mean anything. You're just having a thought. Now, what do you want to do? So those 3 things allow me to have people focus on what they do well and start to regain confidence in an area that they think is going to be they're devoid of talent in what they want to accomplish. So in some cases, it's been somebody who wants to be an artist or write a book or run for Congress or, move up from being head of a department at a university and then being a dean or something of that nature, and then maybe being a provost or something. Doesn't matter who it is. They all are wired the same way. Some people have moved 2 or 3 times, gotten more money and gotten promotions, and now they've gotten to a place in their life that they're not quite sure what to do. Now, I'm saying, being a crackpot that I am, what if we gave kids some muscle in this area? What would things look like 15, 20, 30 years from now? If they had great ideas, were confident in sharing those ideas with other people, got support from other people in terms of acting on them, and then now all of a sudden are getting that confidence and getting that swagger, not like a competitive bad thing, but in their own mind being unmessable when somebody's trying to play with their psyche. Do you know what I'm saying?
My dad now
Yep.
will not mock if I told him that I was going to fly to the moon at 6:00, he would say, uh-huh. Because at 6, 7, 8 years old, I also was telling him that I would be doing this. I
Yes.
am going to change the way the world does. I don't like the fact that it's okay to leave a funeral and do this.
Yes.
I don't like this stuff. And he was like, those are big dreams for this little child. Or I would say, I'm going to be on TV and I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to write a book. He didn't get it. And he would stifle those dreams like parents do when they don't want you to be disappointed, when they're trying to protect you from hurt. Now he sees me saying, put anything in my path, tell me no, just tell me no and try and stop me. So if I tell him that I will someday be having this conversation on the 50-yard line of a football field with an athlete, He doesn't say, "Oh, that's a pretty big dream." He says, "Oh, okay." He might not know how, but he knows not to stifle that dream.
Yes. So you do know that the science of accomplishment and goal setting is also applicable towards changing that inner conversation where you're struggling to find the surface and get your nose up above it and get some air. And that's an important thing to fall back to. And one of the things that I've heard recently that I really appreciate is somebody saying that I may be offline for 2 days. I may be offline for 3 days. And there's a technology, and guys like Tony Robbins and some master sales, Brian Tracy, and all the NLP type of stuff actually will help you out of the weeds in this, and it's something that we can all do with and for each other. Um, by modeling it, if you know and understand it, you can actually have people see something occur and get an aha moment that they will never get if you try to teach them like out of a book. They have to experience it. And sometimes being an observer can be more powerful than being told what to do 100 times. So I don't know, back on the kids, what do we want to do with them? We want to make them have a choice about being powerful every day of their life. If they choose not to be powerful today, more power to them.
Well, and adults, I would say, to all people.
Oh, yeah. Kids of all ages.
What I want to go into your nonprofit work, your work with veterans, addiction. You do all sorts of things that matter. I started with kids because we didn't go there in our last conversation that we didn't record.
Sure. Well, it's all a variation on a theme. I love people, and I love them at a level that I am always constantly examining how could I be better at this? And in what ways could I possibly be better? And some of the biggest loss that I've had, I had an uncle who was a Marine and had gone to Korea back in the 1950s. And he came back and he went to work and he was changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. I was young in the 60s when he was doing this, but he ended his life. He was not capable. He was meticulous in terms of putting everything where it needed to go. He had a 69 Roadrunner, and he actually waxed the engine parts. Okay. Anything that had paint on it, if he didn't do it every week, it was at least twice a month. He'd be out there in the garage with this thing that, he bought the car, and in 3 years, I think he put about 7,000 miles on it. It was one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. And that left me with a huge question, like, what's up with that? What would cause somebody to make a decision with this beautiful family, a wife, my aunt, and the 2 kids, my 2 cousins? And he just at one point said, "Patty, take the kids outside." And they were standing on the sidewalk, and he ended it. And that was a man who was so loving and giving. He gave me my first shot of whiskey at my grandfather's funeral. He said, "Don't tell your ma, she'll have my head." And that was it, Uncle Roland. So as far as veterans go, while I've been involved with the chamber here in the town of Windham and Willimantic, there's been a big outreach. Our chamber executive director is also the foundation director that I'm going to be doing grant writing through and for, so that I can maintain my for-profit status and also do some other things such as having community homes for people that are not poor. There are a lot of people that are out there that work 9 to 5s. They have good income, and in many cases, they've been told you're either going to clean up your act or you're not going to be here anymore. and there's a lot of demand for that. I have a friend that's doing that down in Florida. And it's huge. It makes a difference for these people to continue to, to be productive in their jobs, but they can't do it in their normal routine with the normal people that they see when they're outside of work. Being in a sequestered environment works for them, just as it does for people that don't have means. So the homelessness side of it, the drug addiction, just more or less not taking care of yourself, and then ultimately suicide. At-risk groups, as far as I'm concerned at the moment, the big ones are going to be veterans and first responders. And the first responders, funny enough, if you go and look at any police department, you can have as many as 70 or 80% of those guys all being ex-military. And they're still looking for a routine that will support them. There's a little bit of difference, though, in terms of being a firefighter or being a police officer. The guys go into the service for 4 or 5 years. They may or may not be on a battlefield. They come back and the routine's not there for them. They have to figure that out. So the ones that end up going to work, and I'm not speaking for everyone out there that who goes this route. There are a lot of people that just take to it like a duck to water, and it works fine for them, and they never have a problem. But there are far too many of them that are not dealing with it well, and they're subject to substance abuse, and then sooner or later some suicide. And that's not okay. It's really not okay. What a precious gift it is to be here in the first place. I mean, we can't even come up with the math that makes it such a miracle for you and I to be sitting here. You can't fathom it. To make a decision on a down day to call halt to it, we can do more. That's all I say. We can do more.
And I love we were connected through someone. I
Yes.
love being able to connect you with someone I know who does Reiki and sound healing for those types of communities. I love just people who do this work and who enjoy healing and working together. There are so many trying to bridge these gaps.
Yes.
And really there really are. And the more of us that are working together, the louder we get. Anyone that wants to be a part of this, please reach out to any of us. I have somebody who said, I'm ready. Like I please connect me with places recently. Please connect me with places that I can help with addiction, veterans. So I love when worlds connect like that. There are resources, and it's hard finding them on your own. So if you are looking and you're listening, we can help you do that. The hardest thing is, I said it earlier, I don't know if it was this episode or before, I use affirmations. It's very easy to use them when things are fine.
Yes.
When I'm not okay, I use them, and it makes no sense then, right? But when you're not okay, looking for a resource is impossible.
Yes.
So having someone to give that to you, having the names on the list of who to call, we're two people who will do that for you, and happy to do that.
100%. And as serious as that subject is, and I was right there with you, and then all of a sudden, when you mentioned the affirmations, all I could think was Jerry Stiller on the show about nothing, where his chant is "Serenity now, serenity now."
Seinfeld.
Thank you. Don't get old. It's a terrible thing to lose your.
Yes. No. That's Jim loves quotes regularly. So you do important work. Who do you work with individually? If people are listening thinking, I would love to talk to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, the referral networks are the same in every community. A lot of it is the faith-based community that's going to be the first responder and make a suggestion. You can always dial 211. and get yourself registered, and on the list for getting some kind of help, whether it be financial or a place to live, or some kind of treatment. And the other thing is just talk to your friends about it. Everyone knows somebody that got out. Sometimes they go out and they come back, but the ones that have gotten out, and if you want to get out, ask them how they did it. In This is good. I don't care where you are in the United States. There's help for you that is just as simple as dialing. You can even dial 911, and you can say, I'm having really bad thoughts right now. I'm thinking about not being here tomorrow. I'd like to find out if there's someone I can talk to. And the same thing is true in terms of the medical community. You can go to hospitals, walk-in clinics, up and down Main Street. You can even go, to your town hall and say, how do I get a list of resources that are available with social service agencies in town, and get referred into those. So all you have to do is decide. And when you decide, the world will line up with your intentions and it'll line up with your action.
If people want to connect with you,
I'm easy. So by all means, come on Facebook and just, send a friend ad to. You're not going to be able to do that right now because I think I'm at maximum friends at the moment. However, if you send me a message that says, I heard you on a podcast and I'd really like to know more about either A, how do I get connected with people? I've got family members that need some support. Or B, I love what you're doing. How can I get behind it? What can I do where I am in the United States or in the world, to help support that? Because this is not something that's just particular to Colorado or Connecticut or Florida. It's absolutely everywhere all the time right now. And then the third way that you can do it, I will give you my business phone number, and that is 860-450-1737. That's 860-450-1PDS.
and we'll put that in the show notes. If you're driving, don't hurt yourself.
The contacts app.
Alexa answered.
Siri, actually, she has this way of just kind of suddenly coming out of nowhere with the most brilliant things. She said, you can do that, with the contacts app.
This world, technology kicked us off last time, and now they're joining us.
Absolutely.
Gotta love it.
So I got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
And this goes down to not how do you get assistance for one person, but just in general. You mentioned something, I think, a couple of times to me about the conversation where you're located right now. I would love for people to connect with you if their community is establishing themselves as a leadership community for grief counseling, for more or less just giving people some training on how to get along with it. Especially if they're in Colorado, it'd be nice for you to get hooked up with some more networking folks around the. It's a big state and it takes some effort to meet centrally, but you can always meet like this. And I think in the meantime, when you start sharing references and state officials who are tuned into this, everyone has lost somebody. And this is not ever personal. I mean, it's just has to do with the time you're going through. So could you say a little bit more about that and how who would you like to really get to know in the state of Colorado?
Colorado, if you are listening, I talk to you all the time. Global Grief Network, Tony Lynch and I are in Northern Colorado. We are both actively working loud and proud to change any and everything, legislature, bereavement laws, get into the workplaces. Grief Hab is rehab for grief. Come connect with me online, in person, about any and everything grief or mental illness.
Yep.
I have been in Colorado for 10 years. I have been actively working to connect with schools, first responders, any and everywhere. I did have some luck, unfortunately, during the some of the tragedies, during the King Super shooting, and some of the fires when all hands on deck were needed.
Yes.
In those type of situations. But as far as the conversation as a whole, it's just not discussed here. And I have people who have lived here and agreed and told me that they were speakers at the event that we had, Healing Together Through the Holidays. It's just not discussed in the schools. Growing up here, I didn't know that you could get help outside of, if you could afford it,
Yes.
on your own, for people who can't, for people who just want help, for people who maybe don't have the means and don't know what to do or where to go on your own. Help is available. Resources are available any and everywhere. All I know of in Northern Colorado is Summit Stone. I hear good and bad things. They're not the only resource. People want to be available for any crisis. I would love to be on police calls when there's a mental health crisis, so that guns aren't drawn when I can see an anxiety issue and you see an angry person.
Yep.
So working to do any and everything here, and just not getting the support. If you are in legislation and you are an advocate for liaisons between mental health and police force,
Yes.
please reach out.
Your leverage person is out there. They may not be listening right now, but one of your listeners knows somebody who is sympathetic, to the whole idea of things are not going as well as they could be. And that they also recognize that this is bigger than one person can pull off. This actually does take a whole team. And Sam, what I'm looking forward to is I'm going to need more people that are at the clinical grassroots, sneakers on the street kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to having you involved, even remotely, in what we're doing, as possibly even being a board member or something. We're still making all of that up, but there's always room for talented people who are committed. And you definitely know where you're going and what you want to pull off here. And I'm your partner in that.
Thank you for everything you're doing. You know what you're doing. If you are a nonprofit, if you are looking for information, even just in one phone call, you had information for me that I did not know, you can reach out. Bill is a great resource. Thank you for everything you're doing, for your time today twice.
Yeah.
If you're listening, until next time, always be ruthless.
Bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening today. Your support means everything to me, truly. If this podcast resonates with you, please do me a favor and join in the Ruthless movement by making some noise and doing one of these 4 things. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Tell a friend so we can break stigmas even faster. Leave a review so people can see what you think of the show. And last, if you want to learn more about me and be a part of the Grief Hab community, please head on over to the Facebook group. We'd love to have you. Thanks again for spending your time with us, and see you next week.